Today is May 20 what?
22nd?
22nd.
Only a week to go and the month is over with.
Yeah.
Believe that?
Talk about time.
I think she's getting on Hawk.
Okay.
Sarah.
They should give you an honorary title for the amount of technical stuff you have to deal with on a regulated basis.
There's no way I could do this. Not without taking an entire course on it.
Way too
Just
complex
imagine
for me.
Doctor Strange, but you know, much worse.
What was that?
He was making a Marvel reference, I think.
No, Doctor. Oh, I'm
Doctor
sorry.
Strangelove.
I was thinking that's Strangelove. Sorry.
Hey, you can't find
Wrong
me.
reference.
This is the war room.
Okay. We are streaming on YouTube now.
Okay.
We're in Jitsi.
Gotta look pretty for the ladies.
Sounds like
Oh,
others might be having a
reminds
little trouble
me of
connecting to
the movie
Jitsi right now.
Armageddon. The guy's sitting there, and he's got the nuclear bomb between his legs, and one of the guys looks up at him
Nuclear
and says,
vessels.
"Get off the nuclear warhead."
You told me where the nuclear vessels are.
I know.
You're
I
streaming.
know.
Yeah, settle down. Man.
Sorry, good. Golly,
I'm just
gee
saying.
whiz.
Yes, Molly.
There's a public.
This is what you get when you have a teacher come over. You know, they have to,
Yeah.
Yeah.
they don't
I know
realize.
both of my parents are teachers, so.
Oh, you poor soul. This is the ejection seat of death. Oh.
Injection seat.
Doom.
Is this a piece of chocolate?
I don't suggest you try biting it.
There's chocolate inside, but we use it for game.
I was
Play.
just wondering.
Yeah.
Here's that. You have your X-ray vision, right?
Yeah. In the
Hello and welcome to Tolkien Society. We're just getting things rolling here. Bear with us.
That's my phone.
Oh,
Today is May 22nd, 2021. TolkienScholars.org. May 22nd, 2021. TolkienScholars.org. Monthly Tolkien Society, a week later than normal.
That's
All
only
right,
because the
servers
Saturday
went
was the
down
first.
just like half an hour before. So I was scrambling. And there's a lot of what happens is the hard drive filled up on the server from a backup, and it took everything down. Database down, broadcasting, website, everything. Had to delete some files, reboot everything, get services started.
what I want to know is whether the word on your shirt technically qualifies as a palindrome or not.
Yeah. Not so much.
Not so much. I will always be ignoramus when it comes to Linux.
Linux.
Yep.
Hello, my name is Linus Torvalds, and I pronounce Linux. That was an old sound recording that came with the early installs of
Really?
Linux to tell people how to pronounce it.
Knowing that they would need to.
Because he's Finnish. Well, they were always like Linux and Linus, you know, because they called him Linus Torvalds.
Linus Torvalds.
Yeah, and they still do now, but back in the 90s, he put that in your default setup
That's right.
of
It's a
Linux.
Charlie Brown, right?
All right, there she is. Welcome! Yay! So glad you made it.
Hi, Sarah.
Buongiorno, come stai? Molto
So
bene.
she's joining us all the way from Italy. So glad.
Are you in, is it Verona? Where are you?
Verona, yeah.
Yeah. And it's very late, so we will try to keep things amusing and very entertaining.
No pressure.
But of course, people in Italy probably stay up pretty late, huh? I mean, compared to, I think, the U.S., I don't know. I feel like,
Why do you think that?
I don't know.
Why
When-
is that a stereotype in your head?
Stereotype? Oh, I don't know. I lived in Europe for 4 years.
Which part?
Well, I lived in Great Britain, and there it was polite to call people until 10 o'clock at night on the phone.
Oh.
Whereas here, I was always raised that you don't call people past 9:30 latest.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
same here. Yeah.
Yeah. What about there?
Well, I think it depends if you're East Coast, West Coast too.
True. What about you, Sarah? Like, do people, if it's not a close friend, how late may someone call you on the phone that it's still
On the
polite?
phone,
Yes, like
um,
9, 10.
9 would be okay. 10 would be late.
That would be rude. Yeah. But we feel honored that we're part of your late night, Tolkien fandom.
Yeah, that's a pleasure.
All right. Hail and well met, Maya Govanen.
My Gavana.
It is, well, let's call this a Tolkien Society meeting to order. It is May 22nd, 2021, Saturday. Normally we meet on the third Saturday, but due to schedule conflicts, we are meeting on the fourth Saturday this month. So glad you could all make it in person and online.
Well, it was a weird month. Saturday was the first, so
It
this
confused
makes
people a little.
more sense.
Well,
Yep.
all right. So, Brian, so I'm Hawk Robinson, founder, and go ahead and introduce yourselves briefly.
I'm Brian, and I'm the secretary.
I'm Corey, and I've been here for a while.
Hi, I'm Anthony. I'm a native of the East Farthing, and
Nice.
I've been coming to these meetings off and on for the past almost 4 years now. So
Woohoo!
That's right.
Well, that means I've been around longer than that. I
Yeah,
don't
you get the
remember.
6-year badge, you get the 4-year badge. I get the
Yeah, I
11-year
graduated.
badge, and Hawk is like eternal founder.
And joining us from Italy.
Yes.
Hi,
Just quickly introduce yourself.
I'm Sarah from Italy. I'm fan from long ago.
And you first joined us about a. You first joined us.
I'm a Tolkien fan here in Verona.
What's that?
I'm a member of a Tolkien group here in Verona.
Wonderful. And you first joined us here, what, about a year ago for Tolkien Society, or 2 years ago?
That was a year ago for our roundtable discussion, the panel.
right.
So Sarah was part of that along with John
That
Garth.
was wonderful.
Yep.
Is it already a year?
Yeah, it'll be a year it'll
Soon.
be this fall. Yeah.
Yeah, although the next moot is this July, so.
It is.
Yep.
Yeah. It's been
So
something
we're
like
just using that TV instead
8
of
months.
that one. Okay. Do you have
I
our
do.
meeting notes from last month?
I do indeed, sir.
And for those who don't have them, they are they on the website? Did I get them on the website?
I believe you did.
I did. Woohoo! So the April 17 meeting notes are on the TolkienScholars.org website if you would like to follow along. Sir, if you'd be so kind.
Absolutely. So on the 17th of April, we met together, the Aya Tolkien Society of the Pacific Northwest, Inland Northwest.
The only Aya Tolkien
only
Society.
Aya Tolkien
An official
Society.
smile of the
Yes.
UK Tolkien
That's
Society.
right. That's right. And we had attending Hawk, Chris Cooperstein, Richard Baldwin, Corey Newkirk, myself, Brian Huseland, and John Walker. And I read the February notes. There was no March meeting. I'm not sure. That wasn't because of March Madness. It just did not happen.
There wasn't enough people.
Yep.
Oh.
And then we asked the question last month, did anyone chart Tolkien's travels? That was a question that came up in our notes, is because of this question having to do with
That's Tolkien himself, not his characters.
Yes.
Yeah, where did he go?
because
his
in
lifetime?
February we looked at that painting of his from Switzerland, and so
Right.
we were saying, well, where did he vacation?
Yeah, because he started, in Bloemfontein, South Africa.
Mhm.
That's where he was born and spent the first few years of his life, and moved to different parts of England. We know went to different parts of England with his family, right? There's different stories about that.
And Wales.
Vacationing. Yeah, just the region.
Maybe Scotland, but never Ireland, I don't think.
I don't know. He talks about Ireland quite a bit.
Yes.
I can't remember if he went. I think he did, but I'm not sure.
Maybe. But I think he went to Italy, didn't he, Sarah? Did Professor Tolkien go to Italy ever?
I think so, but I'm not sure.
Okay,
he went to
there's a research question for you, okay?
Actually, I think he went to Venice. I remember him.
Did he
talking
go to
about it.
Venice?
I think so. Yeah, at least Venice in one of his letters.
Okay, maybe
But-
Venice.
Yeah.
There's a clue.
Venezia.
What about Germany with his, with all those
that's a
words?
very good question. With his,
But the time period,
Tolkien?
having that be an issue at the time.
Yeah. Well, and the time even between the two world wars was not one that the Weimar Republic was not necessarily,
Not a good place to be.
place you want to
when
be
it was
either.
huge inflation and everything.
Sure. So, I don't know. That's
Yeah.
good questions, but yes, the Tolkien name comes from Germany. For those of you who didn't
Anybody
know.
want to take this on as a short little project?
Oh, sure. Tolkien's ancestry?
No, Tolkien's Travels.
Oh.
That sounds
We
like a
want-
good book. If
we
it's
want-
not already a book,
And we
that
would
should
like
be a
a
book.
tour on Google Earth, please.
Oh man.
If that's not a book, it should be.
Yes.
Tolkien's
well, I was
Travels.
looking for my copy of John Garth's The World of Tolkien, where he shows all different places in Britain that served as inspiration for his writings. Anyway, we're
We
getting off
kind
the
of
notes.
talked about how that parallels the Hobbit, not the Hobbit, but I can't think of his name. Bilbo's travels as well as Frodo's
There and
travels
back again.
outside of their usual.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, Tolkien traveling outside of the Shire, being a parallel to Frodo and Bilbo. Back to our notes. Hawk started us by reading jokes from "A Dragon Walks into a Bar" by Jeff Aldrich. And
Volunteers move all my stuff.
also, we had an update on the One Ring Kickstarter, and how it raised $20 million in the first day.
20 million?
No, 2.
2, yeah.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't
That
that much
total?
on the first day. It was a total.
That's total.
The One Ring RPG.
I looked it up
Second
recently.
edition
I think it raised like
Kickstarter.
17 million Swedish kronen.
Right, but
which
it
is
worked
like-
out to like just breaking 2 million, I
Yeah.
think,
Yeah.
in US dollars. And I have multiple copies. I bought both personally and as RPG LLC as a retailer. So I have at least 5 copies there that I have to sell. I'm not allowed to keep them. I have to
How much-
resell
how
them.
much are you selling it for?
At
I'll give you
cost.
this-
They're
I'll give you
just
this coin.
they're
These
just
fell off the back of the truck.
no,
Hey, I got
they're
money right here.
it's not for money. It's for getting people gaming. I have to charge
Darn.
what I paid. It's not legal for me to give them away.
Oh, I know.
Otherwise
Well,
I would.
I do want to play this game.
Yeah, well, that was the point, so I could get them early.
Oh yes. There
And
be
we will
lots.
be at Tolkien Moot. Whatever version is available,
We'll have the
you'll get
PDFs.
you'll see it at first. Yeah.
Although we haven't gotten them yet, so we're getting close.
We'll see.
Here. Yeah. Okay, so on the notes, unless you wanted to be. Did you have
I was
something
just
else?
trying to get the.
Sure.
So they pledged 17 million SEKs, SEKs,
Swedish kroners.
Kroners, yeah.
Yeah.
There's usually a way to convert the. Anyway, it was over $2 million, which it made it like second or fourth place or something for history of RPGs on Kickstarter. But not first place. That surprised me. Yeah, we're very excited about that. And luckily Francesco and all the other, still tightly involved with its development, Francesco Nepatello, who did such a great job with the first edition. And is very responsive on Facebook, right? We've been very fortunate to be able to talk to him directly on Facebook. We were one of the first, in the States, we were one of the first 75 people to have the original One Ring.
Wow.
And we did it at the Tolkien Moot then, before Gen Con. So that was great.
So it comes to roughly £1.5 million. So that's like a little over 2 million.
Yeah, it was a little over 2
US
million was the
dollars.
news. So
Okay.
16,596 backers.
So I'm gonna have to amend the notes because I put on here 20 million.
No.
Should have been 2 million.
Yes.
A zero.
1 0 too many. It was just a rounding error.
Well, miss.
A million here, a million there.
We need a point there. 2.0. Because it was Tor 2.0.
2.0.
Okay.
A million per version.
Moving on.
I don't
Per,
think
Yes,
version.
I got you.
the guy. We shall make millions.
yes.
$1 million.
Yes.
So the next part of the notes was just a discussion of tabletop role-playing games, Tolkien Moot 17 discussion, which is coming up this summer. We can talk about that after the notes. Chris Cooperstein shared news that Project Northmore did not buy Tolkien's house. in Oxford.
Yeah.
They were not able to raise enough. And the Amazon series, the Lord of the Rings Prime, talking about New Zealand tourism up on the rise again. And April 16 Variety magazine. I can't remember what this was about. Do you? Variety magazine?
Probably has
I was
something to
there.
do with the new movie or whatever.
That's probably it. I think that was maybe something Richard had
Movie
shared.
or
Nah,
TV show?
TV show.
Oh, okay.
We did a little review for the sake of everyone, a review of the Golden Age of Numenor, like what exactly are we aiming for, and I did look this up to confirm it. So it's Tar Aldarion to Tar Minastir, because it was after Tar Minastir that his son started enslaving
Right.
the people in Middle Earth. So really, if you want to kind of bookend the first contact of the people, where you have these sailors from Numenor who come and bring enlightenment, all the way up to Tar Minastir, who was definitely still exploring Middle Earth and taking some of the resources, but much more from a helping point of view. And it was with his son afterwards, where it starts to be taking advantage of. It's more supremacy, more imperialism. So we're really trying to keep to this time. The discussion is going to be, thank you, on that middle time period. So not the rise of Numenor,
Right.
and not the fall of Numenor, but truly what made Numenor great. So that's what the Tolkien will be on, and because I feel like it often doesn't get a lot of people. We talk about the golden age of comics or the golden age of various things, but with Numenor it doesn't get as much press. Ooh, are those that's for the
That's the different versions of the world.
Art Project.
Brian Lewinsky from Other Minds magazine.
Oh, my.
That's one of our earliest issues. We'll talk about it. Put that
Okay,
out there
okay. That's for later.
Yep.
Maps, Sarah. Okay.
I think so many people are interested in elves and dwarves and all that fun exotic stuff that I think sometimes, like the Numenorians, kind of come off as a bunch of Romans that are running around doing historical things,
Sure.
very historical things, and so it's not as exciting or as mythical in some ways
It
as
seems so. Yeah.
as the Silmarillion, the very beginning of the Silmarillion, and versus the.
Yes.
So let's get through the notes and then we'll circle back to.
All right.
Okay.
Sounds good. Sounds good. All right. Just in conclusion, we also referred to the Tolkien Society Awards in 2021, and that led to a discussion of World War I and the dedication of the U.S. National World War I Memorial on April 16th this year. It was meant to be completed 2 years ago, but they did not have enough. There was too much, the permissions and the money, the funding had to come through. We read Tolkien's letter 182 from the Letters of Tolkien, and this involved a discussion of the colleges of Oxford, different colleges within the university. Here in America, we have we use those words interchangeably sometimes, but in Britain, you have all these different colleges within one university. And then also just the academic lifestyle and politics. What was it like for Professor Tolkien while he was at Oxford, and what bothered him? Then we read letter 183, which discusses the idea of quest, Tolkien's perspective of a quest versus W.H. Auden, the writer, and his friendly critique or suggestion, which Tolkien then wrote back about. And then we suggested that we should have a topic for the next month to discuss Middle Earth holidays. I assume that meant by holidays or vacations to places that remind us or kind of immersively help us feel like we're in Middle Earth. Is that what you meant? Do you remember?
Holidays. Well, not.
Middle Earth holidays topic for next month is all we said.
I thought it was just what the holidays are in Middle Earth. So you've got Hobbit. Hobbits have their Shire holidays.
Right.
Numenorians have theirs.
Okay.
What are they?
Holidays for peoples in Middle Earth. Got it.
Yeah, unless I don't really remember.
That's fine.
It could be, yeah. Where could you go for a great Tolkien
But that's
holiday?
fine. Yep.
We've got a place over here in Montana.
Yes.
Or do we? Did they
I
collapse?
think it collapsed. I think
Too bad.
there's one in Alberta, Canada, though. That's
Okay.
yeah. Anyway, and then our next meeting, May 22, 2021, from 1 to 3, and those are the notes.
I forget.
Here. Thank you. Well done. I say, good show.
Golf clap.
Where's the beer?
May the
man?
hair
Where's
and
the
his
beer?
toes never
Ale.
fall out.
Yes.
Although they may need to be plucked.
What?
By today's standards. There might be some who maybe don't care for the hairy toes.
If I could just mention a very quick comment on all things Tolkien. The Prancing Pony podcast. You may remember last year we had Sean Marchese, who was on our panel. He is half of the podcast pair of Alan Sisto and Sean Marchese, and they had this last week their moot. So they have a moot that they've just started their first moot. They had their last day. They had as their special guest speaker Tom Shippey.
All right.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh,
On the
that's awesome.
popularity of Old Norse mythology as a resource for modern fantasy, which will be followed by an immersive audio experience of the Council of Elrond. Professor Michael Drought was on there as well. Anyway, several people, and the comment was, somebody said, the Tolkien fandom is phenomenal. In one talk, I get Shrek, Elf, Winnie the Pooh, and Angelina Jolie as a pantheon. A moving discussion of
Wow.
Beowulf.
What?
Laugh until my sides hurt, and then sucker punched with how it all ties together, leaving me with my jaw on the floor in awe. But apparently, it went really well. So, well done, Prancing Pony Podcast. And another podcast that I listened to this last week is a brand new one called The Friendship Onion. And that is Billy Boyd and,
Pippin.
who played Pippin on the Lord of the Rings movie, along with Dominic
Monaghan.
Monaghan. And they basically they started a
It's not
podcast.
Monahan, it's Monaghan.
Monahan, I'm not sure.
You've got ash on my tomato.
Yes. So anyway, so Merry and Pippin, as it were, right? And they do talk about filming Lord of the Rings. They even had a little quiz at the end for some people. It was really funny. I will say I was disappointed because they had a quiz question for two people. It wasn't a real serious quiz, but they were saying what is the name of the volcano that Frodo into which Frodo threw the ring, and they had multiple choice answers. And the person answered Mount Doom, and they said no, it's Barad-dûr, and I thought, that's a cringe. No,
Nope.
Barad-dûr is not the
It's
volcano.
the tower.
Yeah, I know. So anyway,
Really? They got that wrong?
yeah, they got
Oh,
it
man.
wrong.
Like they corrected them, saying that was the answer?
Yeah,
Oh, big
I-
faux pas.
I know. I gave them 4 out of 5 stars, but I did tell them on the review, guys, this was really funny, and please keep it going, but study up on
No!
your
Tolkien lore.
Tolkien lore.
Ouch.
Actually, what's the Elvish name for Mount Doom or the
Orodruin.
Lower Druid? Yes.
Orodruin.
Is it Elvish?
Or Druin. D-R-U-I-N.
Or Druin.
Yeah, I mean with the rolled R, but
Yeah.
Well, one of the Hobbit, those two guys, I can't think of their names. You just said their
Dom
names.
and Billy.
Right. Has an actual song for the Hobbit movie that's actually quite amazing.
Billy's a good singer.
Yeah. So just to throw that in there.
Yeah. We can't play it for you, but you can go and listen to it yourself.
Yes.
Billy Boyd, yeah, it's did he just reprise the that song at the beginning with the dwarves? Was that what he
No,
was
no,
saying?
no, no. He
It
was
a
saying
new-
the very end.
It
It
was
was
the
an
end.
end, it's
It-
like an end song.
credit song.
Yeah.
yeah.
Now I need to go back and listen to that. Yeah. Thank you for reminding me.
Yeah, I have the complete soundtracks to all the movies, so I gotta.
Well, I'd rather listen to the soundtracks than watch the Hobbit movies. So
Ooh. All right. Don't be
burn.
throwing mud now.
I am going to crack the plates and
throw worse things.
yes, yes. So I
Like
would like to.
tomatoes.
I would like to also
They don't exist.
mention, along with the Prancing Pony podcast, Moot and the friendship onion. I wanted to also highlight. Could you give us an update, Sarah, on the presentation that you made about the Silmarillion?
Oh, it was quite an headache. I worked at it for days and days, and in the end, it turned out to be maybe half an hour long. I I was in it for a quarter an hour, but then I started speaking, and I thought, well, I just said a few things, and I look at the clock, and it was half an hour.
Oh,
So, but
so
my boss was happy with it, so happy.
and your audience, how much background knowledge did they have on the Silmarillion? Were they was this pretty much new information?
But I don't have anything. I don't have data at the moment. I don't know how this is going because it's going to be part of a course, and my boss is going to sell it on his website.
Oh,
So, so at the moment I don't have any data.
okay.
Just to feedback. But I hope my friends, a few friends saw it and they say it's okay.
And was this presentation you recorded this, right? And but
Yeah.
was it for people in Verona, or was this course? This is something that for people all over in Italy.
It's, it's for people all over in India.
Right, right.
It's online, it's an online course.
And then, did you want to give an update on just you've been doing some really interesting um, posting over the last, I don't know, few months about World War One. Is there anything else that you wanted to, any other projects that you wanted to mention that might relate somehow to Tolkien or not?
I really like the research on World War One because all the time I was thinking about the Lord of the Rings and Tolkien because especially I especially look at the life of the soldiers in the trenches and how they live it, how the war affected them, um, and how the environment was. So it was all the time I was thinking to the Lord of the Rings because it's really it describes what is in there, especially the relationship between the soldiers really was like Sam and Frodo and also Gollum. I really like it because it was insightful.
Yeah. Did you guys see ever get around to seeing the Tolkien movie? I mean, that that was a biography, like a movie that was
Oh,
about
yeah.
Tolkien's life.
Oh,
I haven't
the
gotten
biopic?
Yeah, the biopic.
Yeah.
What did you think of the scene where he's in the war?
Is it the most recent one, like the one that came out
Yes.
a couple years ago?
Yeah. This is a few years ago.
Uh-huh.
And the part I was referring to was where he's out there in the trenches and seeing all the horror of war, and then it kind of is very creatively. Zara, have you seen this? It's like,
Yes,
and so there's this part
yeah,
where someone's on horseback. It's like these scenes that kind of.
yeah.
I think there's one scene where it kind of makes it seem like maybe he's hallucinating or he's kind of imagining um, a a Balrog or a dragon. I can't remember. Um,
Yeah, it was I think both.
okay.
There was a dragon. I'm sure there was a dragon. But yes, I had the same impression that they were trying to because Tolkien was ill at that time, and the French fever gives hallucinations, and I think they were trying to yes to mix the reality of the war with the imagination Tolkien's had, and it was really good. I really liked the film. I really liked the way it was constructed.
Okay. Was there any topic that Corey or Anthony that you guys wanted to bring up before we kind of get into some of the other things that we might have?
Well, I was kind of trying to bring up the fact that Numenor doesn't get as much attention because it feels a little bit like Atlantis history or something. It's
Yeah.
not really.
Atlantean.
It kind of feels like it doesn't have as much to do with the elves in some ways as it did with. I mean, when they finally capture Sauron, I think that's when things get exciting. But before that, it's kind of like, okay, these guys are, good explorers and they're helping people learn new things. But it's kind of like one of those, I don't know what I want to call them, kind of myths about where everybody learned, like how to sew
Right.
and stuff like that. It kind of. But anyways, I never really found it that exciting to read. I've always struggled with that section of the Silmarillion right before the Lord of the Rings starts. It's it's interesting. We don't really get to hear much about how they made the rings. I mean, what I'm saying is there wasn't an in-depth, comprehensive statement about how the rings happened, and you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, he tells us about it, but I don't know if we, it's not very. I don't know what the word I'm trying to come up with, but anyways,
It was more exposition than
narrative, yeah.
Well, and some people, for example, would also feel like the Silmarillion is kind of
Arian?
yeah.
Yeah, that was his intent.
Yeah, and I think also maybe more centered on the elves. If you think about how
Yeah.
the Hobbit is told from the Hobbit's point of view,
Got that in letters.
that's right. And the Silmarillion is much more elvish in its perspective. In the same way, perhaps, kind of like you were saying, Corey, the way it's structured. Then, it's all about the Silmarils, but then you have the story in the middle about these guys on this island, and it is about the ennoblement. Like, these are the elf friends who have been ennobled.
Right, but in a sense, the Silmarillion feels like it was a elf who was writing it, essentially, right? And so when it gets to the Numenorians, like the Numenorians, when the elves were first told about the Numenorians that they were coming into the world, like we don't know. We know they're kind of off the map when they come into existence. Before they enter the areas with the elves.
The three houses of men when
Right.
they kind of migrate.
Yeah, they migrate from the east to the
Yeah.
west, but the east is not. There's that line at
Right.
the edge of the map, and then
Right.
they appeared somewhere
Which is a
after-
very European way of thinking, isn't it? Because really, I mean, that's what happened historically, wasn't it? That you had somewhere over there, here be dragons, right? And east of maybe the Ural Mountains, right? You have everybody moves west. The Huns move west. The Mongols move west.
Well,
I
I wasn't thinking of it that way.
Well,
but
no,
yes.
but I mean, really, you do have all these. I mean, Tolkien was very aware of all of the. It was just part of his experience that you have all these people moving. Even the Celts were really from the continent, and then they came across to the islands and settled. But then they were absorbed or something on the continent, and so. But you see the Celtic languages survive on the fringes, and all these movements are mostly west or east to west, I think.
Well, all I'm trying to say is the only thing I'm trying to say is that the elves had their beginning at the river
Right.
in Middle Earth, whereas the people of men,
You're right.
they we
Where'd
don't
they
know where
come
they
from?
come from. They just kind of came in from the side, into the story. Kind of,
Interlopers.
yeah, well, not interlopers,
Well,
but
no.
it's kind of like the elves don't know exactly what to do with them in some ways.
It's true, yeah. Although, I guess if you take that first part, like Hawk has said before, don't skip the Ainu Lindale, right?
Yeah.
So this creation epic, if you break it down into these different parts, if you just look at the Silmarillion itself, it doesn't really account for it. Like, where these people are kind of coming from, they don't know much, but then the elves take them under their wing and teach them. But in Ainu Lindale, it says Especially the part where it talks about the Valar, and Aule wants to make the dwarves, but Iluvatar's desire is he has the first children and the secondborn. The firstborn are the elves, and the secondborn are humans, and he says, you know.
But
Yeah,
see,
you have
the
to
elves,
wait until mine
but,
are
but
awakened
the elves
first.
had to deal with the idea of death that men had that they didn't, they
Right.
didn't experience, and that was considered a separate fate that was
Right.
given to them.
Yeah,
Right.
get the gift of man.
The
Yeah.
gift of death, because the elves didn't have to age,
Right.
and the only time they died maybe is when they were in war getting hacked or
And then the potential of reincarnating, depending upon the halls,
Sure.
the
Yeah, I
judgment
think
of the halls of
that
Mandos.
was the downfall of Numenor. The downfall of Numenorians was when they tried to cheat it. Sort
Yes,
that's what
they,
death.
well, they listened to the poison of Sauron.
Yeah, and they tried to.
But this is a very important point, and I think we got into, a little bit into this last month, is that the Sauron, his poisonous advice was not the cause.
No, he
but it
fed
was
it.
yes,
The seed.
he fed this
It was
kind
already
of
there.
he
Right.
stirred up the fire.
because they were already like, why can't we go
He
west?
didn't start the fire.
Oh no!
What are we
Billy
seeing?
It was always
Oh.
burning.
Yes,
But he fed it.
and the eye is turning. Yeah.
Oh man.
Well, so anything else on Numenor before
They
we move
think
on?
I'm-
Do you want to go ahead and?
I was trying to find, I have a very large poster version of a colorized version of this map, right, which I colorized for way back when, for the escape, for the escape from Numenor.
Which we get
This
to use
was
again. Yay!
the escape from Numenor
Nobody looked.
adventure back in 2005 with Professor Chris Seaman, he co-GM'd it
Hey,
with me.
maybe he can go back next year.
Who knows? And then this is the Merpcon 3, Tolkien 3, First Contact, which was 5 adventures. Right, this was a Merp marathon. You can read about it.
Which is kind of what we're adapting
Right.
for this year.
For several years, actually,
Yeah.
pieces of it. If you want to read about what that experience was like, it's in the Guild Companion, written by Joe Mendoza. Might have his last name off. Anyway, he was there with his wife and their baby. They drove across the countryside, I think, from Virginia, and it was a marathon. Right, everybody had asked for more. We want longer and intense, convention. Not just a day, not just 2 days, not 3 days. Let's do 5 days of gaming, but 3 intensive days of gaming.
So there's a pre
Friday,
and post.
Saturday, Sunday, yeah.
Yeah.
And then Chris, another Chris, and others, they wanted an extra day before and after as well. So anyway,
Hardcore. These guys.
this was a hardcore game, and we're trying to get through 5 adventures in 3 days. It was
Okay.
24 hours of gaming, basically.
When you say first contact, is that first contact
This is
between
when
the
the
elves and
Numenorians-
the Numenorians?
the
No.
Numenorians first come back to Middle Earth. So,
Oh.
so centuries before, the war happened, where the 3 tribes of men helped the Valar against Melkor,
Right.
Morgoth. As a reward, they were given the land of gift, Numenor. It was raised up from the bottom of the sea, and they were given ships, and they sailed to the island, and then they stayed there. And the winds were ever fair and pleasant and all of this. So if you want to see the big picture of that, before the world was remade again, let's see, which one is this? This is Second Age 2600s before it was reshaped.
Is this a Mon right here?
Should we
Yes.
hold it up?
Yeah, both of these are Amon. We've got the camera, yeah, maybe, or just bring it
Just
closer
for a
because I've got it tilted. So this is by Thomas Morwinski. We showed all of these at Merpcon 3, Tolkien 3, back in 2007. He did a whole lecture. All the videos are on our YouTube channel if you want to go back and learn about the making of these maps. These were his attempt to be as accurate as possible from every citation he could find. You can get these as a free PDF at Other Minds magazine, which was this was part of the release of the magazine. So anyway, these are each snapshots of different time periods as the world gets remade. So this is around Second Age 2600. These got turned around. They've been flipped.
Oh, this is when the growth,
Yeah, the shattering, right? These
Shattering.
are all different
so then
snapshots.
so then they can't cross over anymore.
So this is Arda in the Third Age, so overlaid with the 3200 Second Age, so you can see the transition.
Oh, it's overlaid. Okay.
So the lighter gray
The
is
bent
the
Cs.
old,
Okay.
And then, the world was made around, basically, so you can't get to Arda anymore.
Right.
And so there's these other islands and stuff instead.
Unless you go a second star.
Right.
Straight on
Peter
to
Pan.
So, and Numenor, right, when Numenor was destroyed, they also made Arda go away. So, here we are. This is Mordor up here, right? We've got Misty Mountains and all that. Shire, Grey Havens. There's Numenor.
I'm confused. When was Arendelle? He took the ship and he flew.
Arendelle. That was when that was part of why they were gifted. Way back when he went to ask for help because of all the horrors that were happening. He went to ask for help. That was way
he had
before.
a magic boat, didn't he?
Well, he ends up.
Vingalot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
So, nicely done. Yeah, so this is what the world looks like after the sinking of Numenor, after the fall of Numenor. This is how this is all Balerian. Or actually,
But where's the boot
Balerian
shape?
already
I
sunk.
want to know where the Italy boot shape is.
Italia. Viva la Italia.
I don't know. So, anyway, all of these you can get as PDFs on otherminds.net. You can just download. I think that's
Kinda looks
issue
like South
1 or
America.
3. I forget which.
There's
And
a
it's
lot of
each of the different time periods. So I took, and then there's one of Numenor.
This would be great for sailing, for charting out
Yes.
role playing
Yes.
on the seas.
Yes.
Ooh.
Yes. In the sequel or prequel,
See what he did there?
after Escape from Numenor, there's Under Umbar, but in between I wanted to do one where you had to like chart the maps and all that. So yeah.
Get out the compass.
Yes. Protractor, all of that.
Oh
good
yeah,
stuff.
man.
So anyway,
Or can I just say, it's like that 1980s text-only Hobbit game where it says, you are in the Misty Mountains, it's dark, and you don't know, you're lost. I could never get out of that spot in the game. Like, you get up there with the
that
dwarves.
Sierra Games Online, like Hitchhiker's Guide.
Yeah, it was like
And
Zork.
Zork.
Yeah. It was very irritating.
So anyway, there's that size of map. I did a full colorized, high quality, better drawing than this, but it was this drawing and it fully colorized of Numenor. So
never
we will have.
realized how
I'll try to have
crafty he
that.
is.
Try to have that before the next meeting because this is just around the corner, and everything's around Numenor for the next few moots. So you might as well get intimately familiar with the map of Numenor. There's a lot to it.
Can I take it home to sleep with?
You can download the digital version. You can download the digital version and do with it what you will.
Oro
He said to get intimate with it.
Oh yeah, the different spurs. Yep,
Yes.
nice. So yeah, this is what we're.
Do you know what we need? We need to help get a scale of how big Numenor is superimposed on North America to give people proper perspective.
Well, if you just look at what the size is of Middle Earth on this map,
Yeah.
which is Europe,
Yep.
right? We know we can equate that.
Yeah.
Then you can just compare it to that.
True.
Yeah, and there was a project years ago, which I was tangentially part of, called MEDEM, which was where they were creating three-dimensional fly-through maps of Middle Earth, all around the world, all of Arda they were working on. And they had much of Middle Earth you could fly through, and it was like a VR setting, but it was all highly rendered geography. It was photorealistic fly-throughs. And it took the maps and tried to estimate altitude, Misty Mountains, and all the information they put in. Very high. This is like geology. This is like the USGS type work. They took USGS technology and put them into
Only
Middle
devoted
Earth.
nerds would
That's
never decide on.
Uber nerds, yeah. So if you want to fly through
Some
Middle
ch-
Earth, look for MEDEM, which is the Middle Earth. I forget what DEM stands for, but it's a standard for mapping.
Some guy
quite
with
cool.
a BS in geology is probably.
Well, it was a whole team of people. It was a whole team of people we were doing. It was great. So anyway, these are all things part of this discussion for Numenor that we'll use to enhance in the coming months as we get closer to the event. So you can be that much more immersed and feel connected to the setting and such. And maps are key to Tolkien's stories, right? They're a key part of his stories. They were very important to him.
So how often did it rain on, because if it's British,
We
they
have-
must have a bit of rain.
We have, in Other Minds magazine, Thomas and others have done exactly that and figured out the different climate zones and everything
Whole
for the
meteorology.
different of Ea, of Arda, not just Middle Earth, throughout, Harad, all of that. If you want to know, yeah, what the winters are like and the summers, the average rainfall, all that. And actually, Iron Crown Enterprises did it with their MERP stuff early on. And then they just tried to improve upon that with
Oh man,
It's
better
500 to 600 miles across.
Numenors?
Yep.
Okay. So 1/6 that of the U.S. Yeah.
And that'd be like Pacific Ocean into somewhere
Yeah.
like
That'd be like San
Mile-
Francisco
Mile
to
City?
Salt Lake, maybe?
yeah.
That might not be enough. It might be might be Denver.
You think it's bigger than like Texas or Alaska? Numenor?
Yeah. I think so.
Let's see how
Alaska, I'm not sure.
Alaska's
Oh,
pretty big.
Yeah, Alaska's the biggest state in the U.S. I think in terms.
We can find that out if we
There's
want to know.
actually-
Meanwhile, while we're doing
While we're
that,
thinking about Englishmen, there's an English guy that lives in the United States that likes to compare the United States to the British because he used to live in Britain and he married an American woman, and he laughs at the fact that Britain is barely big enough to make up more than a tenth of the continuous United States, whatever.
Contiguous.
Contiguous menace. So, anyways, go look that up. It is kind of funny. Something about memos that were lost in the pond is the videos. So
yeah. So
fun.
from San Francisco to Salt Lake City, but as the crow flies, is close to 500 or 600 miles as the crow flies, or as the giant eagle flies. If you have to drive it, it's closer to 730 miles because you have to zigzag. But yeah.
Well, and apparently Italy, the mainland, is about 736 miles from
From the top to
northwest
bottom?
to southeast.
Okay, but
Not
very
counting
skinny.
Sicily, but yes, very skinny. But I wonder if the square miles would be comparable to Numenor.
That doesn't sound. How much is it from end to end?
736 miles.
No, that wouldn't.
No.
How narrow is it?
I don't know.
You can just do the math. You just multiply the two, and you have a square mile. A square. Yeah.
All the pressure.
Just the two
or you
dimensions.
could just type it in.
It's 116,000 square miles.
Okay. Well.
So then Numenor.
Just that's 25. that's 25. It's 25.
Well, yeah, but the stars, though, you have to factor in all. Area Numenor, 167,000.
Oh, okay.
That's on zenite.org.
Yeah.
So 167,000 miles.
Wasn't that bigger then? Just slightly bigger?
Seven.
No,
Yeah, Italy's only 116,000. So
Slightly larger than Italy.
slightly larger than Italy.
Well, you see, with all that pasta,
What's that?
The different shape. I thought Numenor was going to be bigger.
Yeah, Numenor is, but maybe if you throw in Sicily, I don't know.
Australia is. That's all in kilometers.
Say square miles, it'll give it to you.
yeah, a little bit.
I heard that. Heretic. Yeah, that only adds another 10,000 square miles. So
They constantly tell themselves that not all who wanders is lost. You know,
Yeah,
they convince themselves.
oh, yeah. There's a window. Jump you through it.
Australia is 2.9 million square miles. So
Ouch.
Australia is considerably larger.
Yeah, it's like the whole U.S.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I did have it in my head that it was more Australia size, so that's interesting to kind of shrink it
A
down.
little smaller than that. Yeah.
It's still nothing to scoff at, but it explains how they stripped out.
How
so
big
many
is it
trees.
compared to India? How big is it compared to India?
Okay, anyway, we're going to do this forever.
Yeah.
So why don't you do that as a project for next
No.
for a blog post?
If I can remember, I
Homework
would.
assignment.
Yeah, there you go.
Because we need blog postings on our site. We
None of
haven't
you
done any
ever
in
made
ages.
it out to the Hobbit house down near SFCC.
There's
have
the
you?
India for you.
India.
There's a-
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. India's
1.2
only-
million. So still much larger.
Well, yes, indeed. Okay. Well, anyway.
By the way, I am learning Hindi right now.
Well, the only reason why I bring
But
up
I'm
India
not
is because
just learning
India's
the
got like 3 point
alphabet.
Bollywood movies
three,
should be coming.
isn't it 3
I've always
billion
watched
Yeah.
in India? So
Actually,
like,
more
how
like
much area
people?
per square foot are you?
billion.
Are you? Is the Numenorians? How many?
Well, we're gonna have to.
What was
So
the
Other
population?
Minds magazine has all of that
Oh,
demographic
okay.
information. You want to know this kind of really nitty gritty stuff.
No, not really.
Other
but I
Minds
just like to
magazine
harass
has
those.
that. You can go there. It's all free to download. Got 20 something issues, and it's exactly those types of questions for the uber Tolkien nerds to have an outlet and a resource.
Isn't that kind of redundant? Uber Tolkien nerd. It says the same thing. Okay. All right. Well, if some of us are finished now, no, just
Yes.
joking. So Corey brought up good questions, comments. Did you have anything, Anthony, you wanted to bring up?
About Numenor or just
Or, no, any topic.
Any topic.
The floor is open to topics.
I really can't think of anything.
Did we talk about the bedroom coordinator and the new TV show that they've got?
Yeah, that's been discussed a few months ago.
I also heard that you guys know who Patton Oswalt is. He's an
Yeah.
actor. He's
Oh
an
yeah.
actor.
From Happy.
Yeah.
He's also doing a Marvel
I don't know.
comic
I don't know if
thing.
this was a genuine.
Well, he
article.
was
Slow. Speak slowly so that Sarah can hear.
Okay, sorry.
he was in
MODOK.
Agents of Shield.
MODOK also.
But anyway, I don't know if this was a joke article, or if this was a serious article, but I read something that he was hired for this new show. He's playing a character called Kid Gollum. I don't know. I don't
If it's
know.
him, it's a joke because
Yeah.
he's a comedic. He's
Yeah,
stand-up
this,
comic,
yeah, it's probably this,
and he does really
It's
he
like
does funny
Kid Rock,
stuff.
Kid Rock, but Kid Gollum instead.
yeah, it's probably just like one of those. It's you guys know The Onion, the satire.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. Okay.
It must, no, it wasn't from The Onion, but it looked like it was real. But you gotta be careful, I guess, on the internet.
Yeah.
There's a. Anyways, we won't go there.
Okay.
Keep my mouth shut.
Any other topics?
Is it almost 2 o'clock already?
It's 2:00.
Jeez.
Yeah. I think mainly it's just obviously we'll have afterwards talk about Tolkien. But yeah, as far as Tolkien Society meeting is, I think we can move on to either reading a Tolkien letter, or we could talk about holidays.
Whatever folks would like to. Does anybody else have any other topics you want to cover before we pick any others? Sarah, do you have any you wanted to cover this month that we haven't already?
No, I haven't think about it.
See, I thought you meant campsites or places you could go to that were
That's fine too.
reminiscent.
Go
of Middle
for
Earth,
it.
And now I feel crushed.
No, go for it. If that's what you want the topic to be, make it so.
Actually, I think it's far more
Make it
interesting.
so, number one.
Okay. Well, I don't have a great beard like Riker, but I will say that let's still have this discussion because I think it'd be really great to have a clearer understanding of all the holidays that were in Middle Earth, whether it be the Shire, which there's many, or other Manish races. It's interesting, actually, in the One Ring role-playing system, they come up with a few pretty believable ones in Lake Town. As part of the, it's actually in the Lake Town supplement. Those are believable, but they're not mentioned in the source materials. And then, of course, dwarves. Durin's Day is not really a holiday, but it is a specific day of the year that's unique. So I think we're talking about unique days. And then the elves, so that would be really fascinating. So let's do this again next month, and we'd have more time to kind of prepare for that. So what I'd like to share quickly is that when we're able to actually cross the border into that great northern nation of Canada.
Yes, my homeland.
Thank you.
My dad's homeland. Actually.
Really, that's
Yeah.
great. Well, Anyway, right now.
Always knew the Canadians were going
I'm-
to come out of the north
That's
and take
right.
us out.
Take us out. So this is to whet your appetite for when you're able to go north and see what, not Narnia in the north. but
Take
just-
off to the Great White North.
That's right.
Yeah, those Canadians are out there chopping down trees, just to sell the wood to the United States,
Or maple syrup.
Well, we're kind of like the bad part of Numenor. Anyway. Okay, so on CBC News, this is an article. It says, from the Canadian province of Alberta, Three Hills entrepreneur builds bed and breakfast fit for Middle Earth. Positive reaction to medieval-themed glamp site motivates Daniel Smith to recreate Hobbit home. This is posted in 2018. It's going to be a somewhat low-lying bed and breakfast built into a hillside with low ceilings, round windows, round doorways, and a hearth. Sound familiar? If your mind leaps to a certain mythological Middle-earth world made popular by billion-dollar film adaptations of one of the most beloved fantasy trilogies ever written, you will understand the inspiration behind Daniel Smith's, and this is what he calls it, bag in burrows. I have to say, he's clever to avoid using any
trademarked
names,
Yeah.
right? He doesn't call it bag end. He calls it, or even baggins. He says bag in burrows. That's the name of a 3-room bed and breakfast that Smith and his wife are building near Three Hills. He hopes to have one open for business by the spring, with all 3 available to rent by the end of 2018. Just don't use the H word when you talk about it.
What?
We can't use the H word.
H word?
Hobbit.
Oh, Hobbit. I was like, what? What H word are we talking about?
We,
I thought it was going to be heard.
Hockey sticks.
Yeah.
Double hockey sticks. We can't use the H word because we don't want to get into a legal tangle, said Smith on the Calgary Eye Opener Friday. Medieval glamping, and he talks about combines luxury camping. Oh no, wait. They also opened a medieval glamp site on their property that combines luxury camping with King Arthur era cosplay. And that is what, and then he said, we've been big fans of Tolkien's work for decades. It's just been something that's been part of our lives.
You know what this reminds me of? This whole H word thing. It
Yes.
reminds me of the episode of Sliders where they went to a place where 80% of the population had taken the bar exam, and so you read the newspaper and they would never put anything out because the problem was they'd offend somebody at some point. So it was absolutely useless information in the paper. It's the same deal with
Nice. Smith has
litigation.
received letters from Warner Brothers and the Tolkien estate asking him not to use certain H words in any of its media or promotional material, although no formal legal action has been taken beyond that. They haven't told us to shut down or anything else, Smith said, and they haven't got rights on a round door and a window or anything like that, so we're plugging away.
Seriously, I can't believe they're making this an issue.
That's
That's
you have to.
ridiculous.
We've gone 17 years with Tolkien being careful around these kinds of issues.
It's so ridiculous.
There's a reason why there isn't a RingCon, TolkienCon, all these other things anymore. Because the licensing, if you want it to be official, is insanely expensive. It's 6-7 digits. And the budget, the margins for now they're getting bigger, right? You've got Comic-Con and stuff, which make, and Gen Con, they make some serious money.
Yeah.
But the cost overheads are just crazy. So that's why we do this for free, and we try to walk very carefully. What else you got there, Brian? Anything else on that?
That's it.
Okay.
So yeah, I think still haven't done that thing. I think that Montana one is gone now.
That's too bad.
But I think New Zealand is experiencing an uptick in tourism again because of the new series. They
Yeah,
keep
we'll
their
see.
And they've done pretty well handling the coronavirus as well.
Yeah. It helps when you have more sheep than people.
If they're not careful,
Ouch.
if they're not careful, it's not going to be considered New Zealand anymore. It's just going to become a detached version of the city of Hobbiton is what's going to happen. They're going to be pushed out by all this.
I don't think they care. I think
they're like, it's worth a lot of money. Go for it.
Making money hand over fist or hoof or whatever.
Yeah.
Careful.
No sheep or human beings are intentionally maligned in the making of this show.
Oh my goodness.
Okay.
Moving on.
Moving on. Nothing to see here. All right. So next month we'll talk about this. All right. So we need to go ahead to go to letter 185, I believe. Nope, 184. If you have a copy of Letters of J.r.r. Tolkien, you can get it out now.
Did we finish? Because I have a post-it that we kind of
Oh,
stopped
you're
part
right.
way.
It was like a giant letter.
We stopped midway through.
Not as long as the letter to Milton Waldman.
So I think we stopped at where it said, they at any rate have no right to demand that their victims, when assaulted, should not demand an eye for an eye or a tooth for a tooth.
Okay.
And it begins similarly. So it's letter 183. On my book, it's page 243.
What paragraph?
The right after the top paragraph, the second paragraph, 243. Starts with, similarly, good actions.
Okay.
Do you want me to go from there?
Yeah, just let me find my spot, please.
Okay.
It's the beginning of a...
We didn't
Similarly,
finish Auden's letter.
comma, good actions by those on the wrong side will not justify their cause.
we didn't get to Grendel, so we're before that, right?
Was it before that? That's what I had marked with a post-it, was that paragraph.
With Grendel?
Grendel was a few paragraphs before.
Oh,
Do we want to start there to refresh?
No,
okay.
I'm fine. I'm just trying
It's
to...
1, 2, 3 paragraphs from there.
There it is. Similarly, good
Similarly? Okay.
Yep.
All right, go ahead.
Similarly, good actions by those on the wrong side will not justify their cause. There may be deeds on the wrong side of heroic courage, or some of a higher moral level, deeds of mercy and forbearance. A judge may accord them honor and rejoice to see how some men can rise above the hate and anger of a conflict, even as he may deplore the evil deeds on the right side and be grieved to see how hatred once provoked can drag them down. But this will not alter his judgment as to which side was in the right, nor his assignment of the primary blame for all the evil that followed to the other side. By the way, I had 2 modules here that are directly relevant to this topic. They're called reverse dungeons.
Oh, interesting.
Yes.
What does that mean?
We'll talk about that when we get through this letter.
Is the context here he's talking about the idea of quests?
Who's the good guy, who's the bad guy, who's right and who's wrong? People, even when they're doing horrible deeds, will consider themselves to be on the right side, to be good and just for their purposes, and malign what others do as evil.
Well, they got to convince themselves they're doing something right because
We're all
they're absolutely certain they're wrong.
We're all the hero of our own story, that type of thing. So
That's not what he's saying, though.
Isn't that what?
No.
Okay, let me go back to, because he's talking about, if the conflict really is about things properly called right and wrong or good and evil, then the rightness or goodness of one side is not proved or established by the claims of either side. That was 2 paragraphs back. Right, so he's talking about the perspective of right and wrong, good and evil.
Are you sure that we read that already?
Do you want me to back up just so you have context, since it's been a month?
I think
All right.
that might be wise.
All right, I'll start with the overthrow of Grendel then. The overthrow of Grendel makes a good wonder tale, because he is too strong and dangerous for any ordinary man to defeat. But it is a victory in which all men can rejoice, because he was a monster, hostile to all men and to all humane fellowship and joy. Compared with him, even the long politically hostile Danes and Geats were friends, on the same side. It is the monstrosity and fairy tale quality of Grendel that really makes the tale important, surviving still when the politics have become dim and the healing of Danish-Geatish relations is an entente cordiale between 2 ruling houses, a minor matter of obscure history. In that political world, Grendel looks silly, though he certainly is not silly, however naif may be the poet's imagination and description of him.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we talk about naive. Yeah.
Yes. Of course, in real life, causes are not clear-cut. if only because human tyrants are seldomly utterly corrupted into pure manifestations of evil will. As far as I can judge, some seem to have been so corrupt, but even they must rule subjects only part of whom are equally corrupt, while many still need to have quote-unquote good motives, real or feigned, presented to them. As we see today, still there are clear cases, e.g. acts of sheer cruel aggression, in which therefore right is from the beginning wholly on one side, whatever evil the resentful suffering of evil may eventually generate in members of the right side. There are also conflicts about important things or ideas. In such cases, I am more impressed by the extreme importance of being on the right side than I am disturbed by the revelation of the jungle of confused motives, private purposes, and individual actions, noble or base, in which the right and the wrong in actual human conflicts are commonly involved. If the conflict really is about things properly called right and wrong, or good and evil, when the rightness or goodness of one side is not proved or established by the claims of either side, it must depend on values and beliefs above the independent of the particular conflict.
Right.
A judge must assign right and wrong according to principles which he holds valid in all cases. That being so, the right will remain an inalienable possession of the right side and justify its cause throughout. I speak of causes, not of individuals. Of course, to a judge whose moral ideas have a religious or philosophical basis, or indeed to anyone not blinded by partisan fanaticism, the rightness of the cause will not justify the actions of its supporters as individuals that are morally wicked. But though propaganda may seize on them as proofs that their cause was not in fact right, that is not valid. The aggressors are themselves primarily to blame for the evil deeds that proceed from their original violation of justice and the passions that their own wickedness must naturally, by their standards, have been expected to arouse. They at any rate have no right to demand that their victims, when assaulted, should not demand an eye for an eye or a tooth for a tooth. So now we're to there.
Right.
And actually, this ties in the conversation
Yeah.
John Walker and I were just having a few days ago.
Yeah.
And this talks, this is where I talk about with role-playing games about moral relativism and the problems with that, etc. So who wants, since I've already read the next two, who wants to, when we get through this, I have some great conversation
Okay.
on this to tie in. Go
Go ahead,
ahead,
Anthony.
please,
Okay,
yeah,
it's
please.
out of the book. Similarly, good actions by those on the wrong side will not justify their cause. There may be deeds on the wrong side of heroic courage, or some of a higher moral level, deeds of mercy and forbearance. A judge may accord them honor and rejoice to see how some men can rise above the hate and anger of a conflict, even as he may deplore the evil deeds on the right side and be grieved to see how hatred once provoked can drag them down. But this will not alter his judgment as to which side was in the right, nor his assignment of the primary blame for all the evil that followed to the other side. In my story, I do not deal in absolute evil. I do not think there is such a thing, since that is zero. I do not think that at any rate any quote-unquote rational being is wholly evil. Satan fell. In my myth, Morgoth fell before creation of the physical world. In my story, Sauron represents as near an approach to the holy evil will as is possible. He had gone the way of all tyrants, beginning well, at least on a level that, while desiring to order all things according to his own wisdom, he still at first considered the economic well-being of other inhabitants of the earth. But he went further than human tyrants in pride and the lust for domination, being in origin an immortal or an angelic spirit. Asterisk point says, of the same kind as Gandalf and Saruman, but of a far higher order. Talking about the Maya or Maiar. But you're just right below the Valar. But anyway, in The Lord of the Rings, the conflict is not basically about quote-unquote freedom, though that is naturally involved. It is about God and his sole right to divine honor. The Eldar and the Númenóreans believed in the One, the true God, and held worship of any other person an abomination. Sauron desired to be a god king, and was held to be this by his servants. The footnote. Do you want to read the footnote? Or?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. Footnote says, by a triple treachery. Number one, because of his admiration of strength, he had become a follower of Morgoth and fell with him down into the depths of evil, becoming his chief agent in Middle-earth. Number two, when Morgoth was defeated by the Valar, finally he forsook his allegiance, out of fear only. He did not present himself to the Valar or sue for pardon, and remained in Middle-earth. Number 3, when he found how greatly his knowledge was admired by all the other rational creatures and how what easy it was to influence them, his pride became boundless. By the end of the Second Age, he assumed the position of Morgoth's representative. By the end of the Third Age, though actually much weaker than before, he claimed to be Morgoth returned. And then back to the main part of the letter.
Illusions of grandeur.
Well, you would think he would be careful after Morgoth essentially got thrown into the outer darkness. You would think they'd learn.
And Sauron got his form destroyed in the fall of Numenor and could never take on physical form again.
Yes.
Right?
But
I mean, he did disappear for a while, but
there's one thing
yes,
pride does well is it blinds you, right?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Pride cometh before the fall.
Yeah.
And keeps on falling.
Free falling.
Anyways, if he had been victorious, he would have demanded divine honor from all rational creatures and absolute temporal power over the whole. So even if, in desperation, the West had bred or hired hordes of orcs and had cruelly ravaged the lands of other men as allies of Sauron, or merely to prevent them from aiding him, their cause would have remained indefeasibly right, as does the cause of those who oppose now the state god and marshal this or that as its high priest. Even if it is true, as it unfortunately that many of their deeds are wrong, even if it were true, as it is not, that the inhabitants of quote-unquote the West, except for a minority of wealthy bosses, live in fear and squalor, while the worshippers of the state god live in peace and abundance and in mutual esteem and trust. I think he's talking about. So I feel that the fiddle faddle in reviews and correspondence about them as to whether my good people were kind and merciful and gave quarter, in fact they do or not, is quite beside the point. Some critics seem determined to represent me as a simple-minded adolescent, inspired with, say, with the flag to Pretoria spirit, and willfully distort what is said in my tale. I have not said that spirit, and it does not appear in the story. The figure of Denethor alone is enough to show this, but I have not made any of the peoples on the quote-unquote right side, hobbits, Rohirrim, men of Dale, or of Gondor, any better than men have been, or are, or can be. Mine is not an quote-unquote imaginary world, but an imaginary historical moment on Middle-earth, which is our habitation.
Interesting.
Is that the end?
Nope, but it's a good stopping spot.
That's the end of that letter.
Oh, okay.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh.
That was the end of 183.
Are we going to read the next letter?
Well, let's discuss this one first.
Okay.
And then we'll see if we have time.
So, Hawk, do you agree with Tolkien's thoughts there?
Well, I have lots of comments about different parts of it. So one part is he talks about if Sauron had won, what would it be like in Middle-earth?
Yeah, what was his end game?
And
exactly?
well, and we saw what it was like both under Morgoth and Sauron when others didn't intervene, which is a big part of what the First Contacts in Numenor story is about. The world gets taken over by this brutality, right? It's might makes right, absolute rule of law, in a negative way, not in a positive way.
Yeah.
Under a single will, not the good of all the people.
Right.
Right. The absolute tyranny in the way that tyranny is now used, rather than the old Greek way of tyranny. And really, really, and primitive survival, just eking out each moment in terror.
Reduced.
A life of the base experience of survival and not much more. And when the Numenorians come back to Middle-earth after they're being gone for centuries, that's the Middle-earth they come back to, is this place of terror that's been taken over by the creatures and monsters and minions of Morgoth and Sauron. And it is not a nice place, and Manish people all live in very primitive, squalid. Night is a terrifying period. The woods are a terrifying place to be. Everything's terrifying. And here come these bright and shining great men, very tall, well-nourished, well-educated. They're traveling the world, incredible armaments compared to these very primitive armaments and cultures. And they are generous in sharing and helping. They drive back the night, if you will. They drive these creatures away during their visits and such, and help out and bring quote-unquote light to the area and really make a difference. And they come and go, and they become the stories of the primitive Middle-earth people as the Numenorians come and go.
Isn't that kind of a parallel to Arome when he was brought to protect the elves that were in darkness before the
you mean
lights
Orme?
came. Orme, I
Orme,
can't pronounce
yeah.
it correctly.
Yeah, they had the extra consonant.
Kind of, I think.
You know, because he was known as a hunter, as he had that
Yeah.
horn, and the elves were okay because he was kind of like protecting them for a while.
But they
then-
didn't live in the same level of terror all the time. They had some. They learned to start to stay together and stuff, but they weren't afraid of the dark. First of all, right? Because there was no sun yet. It was just stars, I think, or no, not even that at first. Right? It was some twilight, and eventually the stars. I can't remember the order of that.
Right, but they still implied that light was important for their birth. So
Well,
it's not starlight, even if it's only twilight. It's still light. It's not complete
yeah,
darkness.
but it was very different. Whereas for the Manish races, night was terror, not for the elves. The elves in Grey Havens and Beleriand and such, they didn't live in terror. They had to deal with invasions, but they had centuries of peace, and they had armies, and they could stand their own against Morgoth's and Sauron's orcs for large parts of the time, and then every now and then they get overwhelmed. The Manish races were all fractured little tribes and just at the mercy of all these other minions. So anyway, that's a snapshot of what it would be like. What if the Fellowship of the Ring had failed to destroy the ring and Sauron had won? What would Middle-earth be like? That is represented in this role-playing game from about 10 years ago, 15 years ago. It was Midnight. It's a D&D based one, 3rd edition. And they start you out with a 45-minute, hour-long, hour-and-a-half long, I forget how long, but a short film that they shot, the creator shot. Not too bad for a fan-based film. It's actually pretty good. Have you seen it yet?
No.
I'll have to show it to you sometime. But it's basically, with the serial number shaved off as far as Tolkien assets, but it is basically Middle-earth, and that's intentional, and Sauron won. And instead, all you have left are little pockets of Rivendell is surrounded, right? Lorien is surrounded, right? You have little pockets, little bastions that held out. And the rest of the world has been taken over by Sauron's orcs and minions and all of that. And then there's a whole thing about the magic. It's got a different subculture here to it, but it is intentionally as though Sauron won. What would it be like living under that?
But that's like what is that TV show where Germany and Japan took
the Man in the High Castle,
the Man in the
alternate
High
reality.
Castle,
Yeah.
and the reason why I don't like that show is I like alternative history, but the reason why I don't like that show is it has completely eliminated Christianity, which was a hopeful part of the society that the United States has. Now, you can agree or disagree with me, but I do feel that is giving into despair, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, it's a dystopic setting.
Well, there's
It's
no reason to
dystopia.
play or fight for something if
That's
they got the ring.
So-
There's nothing to fight for.
So that's a great question, Corey, and that they must have thought of this.
that's
when
the hopeful versus the hopeless.
They must have thought about this. So is the goal in the game not certainly to take back the whole land, but to resist and protect these circles of light?
So initially, it's just a game of survival, right? As you start out weak, not very powerful, and everywhere you turn is a threat, which is the nature of these adventures, right? Hopefully, over time, you will band together with the different forces that are scattered, and hopefully, maybe rise up and do something to change the circumstances. It's the underdog, hopeless, impossible odds. And yet rise up and still maybe have a chance. And you may not, right? That's part. So for those who like the challenge of impossible odds, in quotes, impossible odds, that's what dystopic settings are for. Some people really don't like that. I have some players who all they want to be is superhero types. And they just want it to be pretty easy and straightforward because they feel like in their daily lives, life's hard enough. They want to be a superhero. And that's fine too. That's not my preferred gameplay style. But that's why there's games for that style too. This is not. This is a dystopic, gritty game, but it is, again, based on what would happen if Sauron won. It's intentionally based on that. And the movie's worth watching, so it's worth checking out if you can. So there's that. The other part was the perspective of right and wrong, right? Talking about that. Did you have, Sarah, something you want to comment on?
I'm just listening because I like what it was said that you need hope to do something, and taking away hope from the story is
Yeah.
kind of pointless because the story doesn't have a point then.
Well, okay, so that is something I've really seen in the last 20 years as a cultural shift internationally. This has been very fascinating to me as a therapist. So back in the 70s and 80s, we were under the constant fear of nuclear war destroying the whole world with the Soviet Union and the US. Right? We practiced drills hiding under our desks, which was completely ridiculous. Right? That's false sense of security, much like a lot of false sense of security stuff that's out there right now. And we had TV shows, like one of the most watched TV shows in like 1980-81 was The Day After, which is after a nuclear strike takes out much of the United States, and then Trying to Survive. And it caused a lot of upset with a lot of people. It was grim. It was not a particularly hopeful movie, but that was a product of our time. We were worried about total annihilation. And everybody would always be asked, and I was asked frequently, would you want to, if you knew a nuclear strike was coming, but you had time to prepare or not, what would you do? Would you, and you're welcome to have another choice, but most people would say, I would rather have time to say goodbye to my loved ones and be at the center of the blast so it's over. An awful lot of people, that was their response. But there were also an awful lot of people who said, no, I will try to survive. Whatever it takes, we've got to try to survive and try to keep humankind going and not just give up. And there were a lot of different studies, and there's conflicting results as far as that goes. There have continued to be those kinds of studies over the decades, and you can kind of see ups and downs culturally in different countries and globally of hopefulness versus grit, right? Resilience versus lack of resilience versus grit. And unfortunately, in the last 20 years, we've watched both IQs go down and resilience go down. And this is not the right venue for that whole discussion as to why I think that is from a therapist perspective. But the summary is, we have an entire generation and a half now of people who aren't resilient because of the circumstances of the last 30 years and how they've been handled have led to less resilient people, which means that when bad things happen, they're much more likely to splat than to bounce. And that is exactly the splat response is, well, if there's no hope, why bother? The person who bounces, their response is, rage against the dying of the light, right? Whatever, you just do it because you have to fight against giving up, even if there's no other purpose than the fight to not give up. And that study after study after study shows those who have more bounce resilient approach are much more likely to have successes in their life, less depression, longer lived, all these other things happen as a result of that attitude. And it's been very sad and unfortunate to watch internationally, and a lot of this is because of social media connecting us all culturally, right? We have a much more homogenized culture now than we had 30 years ago that has lowered and lowered and lowered and lowered our resilience. And now you see in countries that didn't have all these resources, right, that they're doing well, and they don't have a whole lot of social media time and all of that, tend to be more resilient. Mm-hmm. And those who spend a lot of time on social media and have a lot of resources, right, they have everything to be grateful for, but are less resilient.
I mean, I agree with you about the resilience piece, and I think that's a real thing. I think that with the hopefulness piece, it's
that's
maybe
a key part
both
of the
and,
resilience.
because I don't see that as a versus.
It's part of the resilience.
There you go.
Yeah.
Rather than
that's the point.
Yeah, and I think that it's hard when you're talking about, say, the secondary world, which is what we're talking about, versus the primary world. Mm-hmm. It does seem like there isn't any clear. There's not even, much hope given at all. If Sauron gets the ring, it's pretty starkly portrayed.
Yes, and that is this dystopic setting.
Yeah, I think it's almost beyond dystopia.
Yeah, it's beyond dystopia.
Here's why. I'm going to say that I think it would be worse than what it was like when Sauron gained control of Middle Earth the first time.
Yes.
And the coming back from that, I think you can run a system where you're like, you know what, most people are just going to want to lie in the gutter and die.
Yep.
And you have great stories, and I think Tolkien would say it's all about how you handle the eucatastrophe.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
for example, I think Brendan Sanderson, his first fantasy novel, Elantris, is an amazing book for a first novel, and it's really worth reading because it certainly is a kind of, oh no, there's no hope now. I'm an outcast. I'm considered basically you're dead to the rest of your people. And how do you work yourself out of this? How do you?
Yep.
What in the world can you do?
We have a thing nowadays to tell you how much our more modern society is feeling a lack of being challenged in a lot of ways. Escape rooms, right? And some of these escape escape rooms, you pay to be locked into a room under different circumstances, and you have to try to escape.
Yeah, I've been in one of those.
And there are different levels of difficulty.
Yeah,
And some of them are impossible.
Yeah.
Right? And they're really, really, like, they're different challenge levels.
Yeah.
So that is not for everybody. There are lots of people who go, why would you do that to yourself? That's the last thing, and if you have claustrophobia or PTSD or like that, I don't recommend that unless you're using it in a guided way. But other people love the challenge.
Yeah.
They love to be challenged against very difficult odds for different reasons. That's not for everybody. And this is the diversity of all of our existence.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
What do you think about
are you saying
escape
that
rooms?
the Lord of the Rings as is not difficult or
No,
challenging?
not at all. Are you kidding me?
I mean, I'm just trying to point
I've
out
read a lot.
what I think. What's interesting though is even though Frodo is in despair at the very end of the movie,
He gives up.
he
loses.
gives up.
Yeah.
He gives up. But the point is that even when they were at Helm's Deep, as Peter Jackson kind of showed, was the elf. Can't think of his name right
Legolas?
now. Legolas, became really angry and said some ugly things, and then he had to go back and apologize to Aragorn for giving into despair. And I believe that hope is such a huge part of Tolkien's world because the idea of hope is that it's something that doesn't seem possible even when everything looks ugly, and the possibility is, yeah. So when I say hope, the darker it is, I'm grateful for that. But when you go to a complete opposite and say, well, we're going to let the bad guy take the ring, and then he's going to have all the power he needs, and he's going to completely wipe everything out, and there's no way to cut off his finger again. There's no way to stop him from running the world.
Yes. And, as is pointed out in Babylon 5, in a great speech by Narn Ambassador j.r.r, no tyranny ever stands. They eventually all fall.
The Republic.
It's a great speech when the Narn lose to the Centauri. They completely come in and just wipe them out with the help of the shadows, and he's no longer allowed to be ambassador, and he's kicked out of the council. So as he's leaving, he has this great moving speech, about that. Like, though it take 100 years, we will be free again. And their planet was just bombed into oblivion. All their ships were destroyed. The possibilities of them making any kind of comeback looked impossible to anybody. But that striving against that impossible odds, and history shows throughout eons that no tyranny ever holds.
So I'm going to respectfully disagree on one point there, and not because I disagree with the last thing you said, but because I think that that's true when we're looking at the primary world. We're saying one of the great, wonderful things about humanity is its ability to overcome. But I don't think that Tolkien, in his Legendarium, is setting forth an idea that ultimately holds up the free races, if we'll call them that, right?
The free peoples.
The free peoples, and say, see, it was the free peoples who just didn't give up and they stuck in there, and that's what we're really. I think rather the idea is something. That in his worldview, which is infused in his books, is this idea of inspiration and ennoblement. There's a whole thing which makes the Numenorians different from the people back in Middle-earth, not just because of the reign of Sauron on them, but the fact that because they sacrificed, because they were willing to
So
do
back
these things.
that up.
Well, I will, but
I mean, go back to before they were Numenorians.
right. No, and so there's part of it is who they were before,
Right.
but part of it's outside themselves. So if there's an inspiration piece, which is not merely a stirring up like let's do this, guys, let's go, but there is an outward action. In this case, the Valar, they ennoble, they do something to them that helps them to live longer lives. That was not something
that
that
happens
these men.
when they get the gift and all that.
Right.
But before that, so all these other Manish races joined Morgoth, and only the 3 tribes.
Right.
And then aren't the 3 tribes separate from the Druidine? That's a 4th tribe, right? I'm really.
Yeah, that's
I
a
can't
side
remember.
piece.
I did a whole
It's a
research
side
and now
piece,
I
but
can't remember.
They were considered to be similar enough to the folk of Haleth.
Okay, because the Druidine were considered the only peoples never corrupted.
You've said that, but I don't think Tolkien actually says it, because in this letter he says, and maybe I'm wrong because you could
Yeah,
find
no,
other sources,
when I did all this research,
but in this letter he says he literally said there.
yeah, but he contradicts himself.
Well, so do I.
You know that.
I think it said in the History of Middle Earth that also the three houses of men were corrupted.
Yeah,
before
they were.
came to the West.
Yeah.
And then they repented.
Oh,
Right, they-
sure.
But they were the only Manish tribes, 3 plus Druidine, I
Sure.
think,
Sure.
that fought on the side against Morgoth. All the others fought on the side of Morgoth. And that was before the gifts and such.
Right. No. And you're right. And so there is a desire. Without that desire, then you can't go anywhere. It has to come there.
Yeah. And then they got the ennoblement as a reward and
So
all of that.
I would like to draw a circle here and say there's actually a lot more in common with both of you are saying. I think it's about the nobility of these small peoples fighting back. I mean, I think that's what he does with the hobbits.
Yeah.
I mean, who
The
would-
everyman.
Right, exactly. So there is a celebration of the human spirit.
Well, Helm's Deep didn't. The only reason why they won Helm's Deep was because the hobbits had convinced Treebeard that it was bad enough that they needed to save him.
Right.
At the time, Treebeard didn't care. He was like, "They're not on our side."
Gandalf said it's something like a small pebble that released an avalanche.
Right, exactly.
Yep.
So what the funny thing about it is that there's probably in the characters' minds, like, there's very little hope, and they have a conversation with a tree, and for some reason the tree finally decides to take I can't remember, there's 2 different kinds of trees, I don't remember the ones that
Huorns.
that
The
took over
Huorns.
the
They're the
took over
Huorns.
the but the thing is they didn't win that by force of arms.
Right.
They won that because something else
The
happened.
small, quiet feet.
Right. So it seems to be both and here, and I want to hear from Anthony because he's been pretty quiet. But I feel like there's it's
room
Tolkien
for
saying,
different perspectives.
There is, but I think there's also like 2 gears that work together here, and I think one gear is that the need for human agency in the fight against evil, which, as he says in his letter, is somewhat complicated by people's motives. Think Boromir. But then you have this other gear, which is what they cannot accomplish on their own, whether it be the grace of the Valar, or whether it be outside of we need other peoples to come and help us because we cannot do it ourselves. And it is an outward thing, and that forms part of the eucatastrophe as well. So these 2 things coming together, the outside and, as it were, the inside, the self and the society, or, if you will, Middle Earth and Valinor.
Yeah, and the Song of Arda underlying through
Absolutely,
all this. Yeah.
absolutely. That's where we are good.
But I think that it's also important that there is a community. The community push the individual to do something for the community and not only for himself. And so the community promotes generosity in a way, because it promotes action that is good for everybody, not only for yourself.
Though if you look at hobbits, by the time we come into their story, Remember, they'd become very isolated, protected, and were very much about don't go out there. And Bilbo was weird because of going out there and caring about the fate of others and all of this. Like, no, they're strange people. They're the people over in Bree. Oh, they're odd folk. Let's keep to ourselves. We don't need to worry about over there.
Well, yeah, but that was the way the
isolationism.
English sometimes were.
Well, I'm the U.S. during World War One and all that, and two. And
I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying that he probably
human
was
nature.
pulling specifically from interactions that he probably had
It's a
in
universal,
their neighbors. Because they probably all thought he was a weird dude anyways. Tolkien was not known for being the
I'm gonna knight Anthony here and say it is your turn. I dub the the next
Conversation.
speaker.
Well, I've been listening with bated ears because, no offense, but it's kind of hard to get a word in edgewise with you guys talking. But yeah, I think, I feel like we kind of deviated kind of what Hawk was talking about earlier with regard to kind of how in the last 30, 40 years ago, we've kind of lost a sense as a culture of how to be more resilient and how to handle adversity. And it seems like to me, thinking about like Middle Earth, it seems like the elves kind of lost that sense of how to handle how to be resilient, and because they seem to just kind of give up because they just want to go back to Valinor or
Roman decline.
Yeah, because they were kind of declining at that point.
Navel gazing.
And it took a very small, diminutive little species to really kind of save the day, if you will. So, and I think in Tolkien's letters too, it seems like Tolkien is kind of against more relativism and fanaticism, particularly like political, social fanaticism. Partisanship.
For the sake of my team, not really about what's right, but what's going to benefit.
Yeah, because people have done a lot of bad things, particularly tyrants or rulers like Stalin, like for example. Right before I came here, I kind of glanced at one of his letters where he talks about Stalin as a bloodthirsty murderer, but Stalin kind of thought of himself as kind of a good
just like
person.
Lenin before him, trying to save Russia from the time period of the freezes and eating bodies of the frozen people off the road. That's what in the 1800s was pre-Soviet Russia. And Lenin was horrified. It goes. Peter the Great was like, Russia is the greatest country and the worst country because we can't ever get our act together. There's no excuse. We have all the resources, and yet we somehow can't seem to get to greatness. And Lenin was trying to do that, and kind of lived it less hypocritically than Stalin. And then, and they did not. They butted heads. They did not do well at all.
Lenin can't hate Stalin, but
well, for good reason. And Stalin, thought he was justified for the greater good of the country to do horrific, the pogroms and all these other things, horrible, horrible, horrible things. The millions and millions and millions, in the interest of what he thought was the greater good of Soviet Russia.
And same with Hitler and.
I think that must be on his mind.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, as he's writing this, what are we in the 1950s now? But he's able to look back and think about all these events and saying, as
Korean
Europe
War
is
just about to
rebuilding,
happen around that time too.
What ought we to think about? I feel like there was many good lessons learned, but it took a long time for recovery.
1956.
Yeah, and I also think that to answer Hawk's question of like what would Middle Earth look like if Sauron had won, it kind of reminds me of that scene in Peter Jackson's film, Peter Jackson's film version of The Fellowship of the Ring. Yes, I know I'm quoting the film. It's blasphemy, I know, but
the first one's
the scene
it's not blasphemy. Go ahead.
It's
not complete.
Do you guys remember the scene where Galadriel kind of
yes, if she's given the ring or
no, she leads Frodo to this kind of pool, and Frodo looks into it, and he basically kind of sees what the scouring of the Shire.
Yes,
what the Shire would look like if Sauron had won, and it basically just shows scenes of just utter despair and destruction. It looks like
Sam is in slavery. I think it shows in
really
chains.
all the hobbits are in slavery, and so I think maybe that scene's kind of emblematic. Of what would happen if the Fellowship or the heroes, I guess, would give into despair. Instead of what eventually happened, thankfully.
And they did, except for Sam. Yeah, Frodo gave in. He gave in to despair. He did not make it to the end. And if not for Sam, it would have.
And also Gollum too, because Gollum kind of bit.
Right, but that
would be an
all
unwilling.
three of those
he's an
had to
unwilling
happen.
aid in that regard.
But there's
He could have bitten it off a little farther away if Sam hadn't gotten him that close to
That's
the,
true.
There's
the lava.
there's an idea that whether it's Eru or the Valar, I don't know who's involved, but the idea was that Sauron was essentially so powerful that there was nothing. I mean, even with the they couldn't beat them in physical. The only way they won was by the ring entering into the fire, and that happened not because of Frodo, but because of Gollum biting his finger off, and it was the idea that somehow evil can be transmitted into something good. And the idea is that they did not have the power to meet up with him in armies.
Sure.
They were just barely holding on, waiting for Frodo to finish his task.
They were losing.
Yeah, they were
actually
losing.
yeah.
So if you give Sauron everything, if you say he won, then you're saying that the enemy, which Tolkien was very big on using the word enemy. You know, it was used in the Psalms, in the Bible, about people who were not just. What I'm saying is the character in his story is a reflection. He believes that all evil stems from Satan. So everything that's in the reflection of Satan is the way it is in the world. And so the idea is that he's pointing out that this is a
Sauron symbolizes it. You mean?
Yeah, Sauron symbolizes it, and
Or
the
Morgoth's nature.
idea is he means bad for everything, and to give that power, the only thing that could stop Sauron after capturing the ring would be if they had another war
With the Valar coming
with the
in.
Valar
I think
coming
so.
in.
That was
the
their
problem.
fear. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was their fear.
And I wonder too if he was like, basically I'm Morgoth returned. If there would be that whole thing again where you had the Morgoth matter. What would you bring up before where there was the
Morgoth nature
the Morgoth nature in
imbued in the environment. Yeah,
and so that would
it's
have
part of the One Rings concept.
and that would be
Further
fulfilled.
more of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
We saw it when Isildur took the ring. If he had destroyed the ring then, but we had another chance. We being the collective
Yes.
in the setting.
Yeah.
It was believed there was no other opportunity. Another opportunity happened. So just because it's believed there was no other chance doesn't mean there isn't a possibility of something else developing.
Well, I'm going to say
So-
that was a very good, friendly debate, and
Yeah,
we can move on now.
I think that's great. And the other thing I just wanted, talking about the relative perspective of good and evil,
All right.
I was going to read the backs of these adventures relevant to that because that's the quickest part. But so this one is called a reverse dungeon. And so in the typical role-playing game world, you're the heroes who, the local elven, human, hobbit, whatever village is being raided by the goblins, and you need to come in and drive those evil goblins away and slay all the evil goblins so they stop raiding the free people's villages and all that, right?
Mm-hmm.
See How the Other Half Lives. By the way, this is by John D. Ratliff
Oh, wow.
and Bruce R. Cordell, who John D. Ratliff was one of our guest speakers some years ago.
Yeah, I read History. of the
Yeah,
Hobbit.
he's got a lot of History of the Hobbit. This is by him as well, co-author. Herpool the Goblin heard a knocking in the upper corridor. Those nosy explorers have found the secret entrance to the goblin den. Herpool must hurry to warn the tribe. If the invaders cut him off at the pass, there will be no means of stopping their mad advance into the lair. Welcome to Reverse Dungeon, the adventure where everything is backward. Instead of playing bold heroes who venture into dens of evil, the players take the roles of the monsters, determined to stop adventurers from invading their homes. Instead of always being the good guys, the players get a chance to be the bad guys. Reverse Dungeon contains 3 linked mini-campaigns in which the players represent 1. Goblins whose warrens are under siege from a band of heroes seeking fame and fortune. 2. Guardian abominations whose vaults are attacked from several directions at once. And 3, ancient undead that must defend the silence of their tomb against crusading clerics intent on destroying them.
Just let me have my silence, will you?
Enter the Reverse
Poor
Dungeon
undead.
and find out how it feels to be on the receiving end of a hero's blade.
Oh my goodness. Which
as Richard would say, I am not evil, I'm just misunderstood.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead.
In the in Journey Quest 3, I think it was, could have been 2, Inglorian is this bloodthirsty hero fighter, right? And he kills every orc he ever sees, because killing equals honor. And he's like, you didn't need to kill the goblin children and the elderly goblins. And he's like, I don't understand what your problem is. They're goblins. And so then we have a scene where we're in a dungeon here. They made it in the tomb of all evils, whatever. And there's a room of these different evil. You've got goblins, hobgoblins, whatever, in a room, and they're talking to each other about how they're reformed. It's a self-help group for ex-evil cultures, right? They're like, yes, I used to go around and slaughter the villages, but I realized how horrible it was, and I no longer have the bloodlust, and I'm trying to teach others, but I'm just misunderstood. My people don't understand what it's like to care about others like this, and it's just, yes. And so it's a self-help group of half a dozen or so of these people in a little talk, doing a little self-help group. And in comes a glory. Ah! Slaughter, 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 slaughter. And wipes out any hope of that.
Yeah,
so
all the tropes.
I love these little. They just Matt Vansel's the writer for all these. Does a beautiful job overturning these. All right, the other one is this. We think is just really great because of the empathy building. Now this has its issues as far as the time period and racial stereotypes and whatever. We're not going to worry about that for this conversation. So this is once the tribe of Altair roamed the sands, free as the great eagle on the wind. Now, caged by an evil mage, these desert riders yearn for their lost freedom. But fate takes a hand as a noble djinn seeks to fulfill an ancient wish. In this unusual three-part scenario, players first take the roles of the men of the tribe who stage a revolt after being enslaved in the pit of the Laughing Afriti, and then try to battle their way to freedom. In the second part, the PCs are the women of the tribe who must escape the evil flame mage's harem and use all their wits to win free of a strange city. And finally, the children of the tribe have to slip away from an evil temple before they can be sacrificed, which calls for them to embark on a magic carpet ride that promises to be the adventure of their lifetimes.
Wow.
So usually you're the heroes coming in to save each of these groups or individuals. Instead, no, you got to do it yourselves with the resources that you have as this average person in each of these, and those different perspectives that come up. And then finally, when he talks about justifying doing terrible things, the assassins of J.r.r. strike in silence and from darkness, certain of their faith and the rightness of their cause. The slayers carry out the orders of their grandfather assassin, never questioning his wisdom or direction. Assassin Mountain is the DM's guide to the secrets and objectives of the assassins. Captured inside, you'll find new information about the holy slayers of J.r.r., from their methods, tools, and secret structure to the means used to ensure the silence of their members. The adventures within pit the player characters against the Slayers of the Everlasting, one of the most powerful and influential sects in J.r.r. The web of deceit and terror spun weaves its way into the city and entangling the PCs and leading them to perils. So the key thing is that from these assassins' perspective, it's a holy war, fully justified. They are doing great deeds in the name of their beliefs and such, right? And this just bringing up those different topics and those different perspectives. These are not common. These are hard to find newer. I'm not finding these in newer modules and such. They're too controversial, and because everybody's so controversy averse, difficult topics aren't taken on the way they should be for conversation and discourse, because people aren't able to do that. And these are part of our higher level training to help people take on but especially for empathy building and being able to, really step outside of our own little narrow thing. So I just thought all these were really relevant to what that last letter was covering. Did you have anything you want to add before we wrap up here? It's a lot we just went over.
It's almost 1 o'clock in the morning,
Yep.
so she's probably pretty...
Yep, probably pretty tired. Shall I wrap it up with a couple of jokes?
Yes, sure.
All right. Did anybody else want to throw anything before?
You know, it's some pretty heavy stuff. So
Yeah.
Jokes would be good.
Yeah, exactly. How do gnomes decide what to name their inventions? Gnomes.
Wow.
Nomenclature.
Oh.
Of course.
Well, all of these are bad like that. That's the beauty of them.
Kind of corny.
Yeah. Oh, they're more than kind of. Trying to look for some that are. If you're not a gamer, they won't be too obscure. Oh, okay. Why is a cleric? You know, clerics in gaming do.
Healing.
Yes. Okay. Why is a cleric like an obedient dog? This is why people don't like to play cleric. Close. You got the right idea.
Yeah.
It heals on command.
He heals on command.
What?
That's why some people don't like to play
Dog.
clerics.
Heal.
Heal.
Oh.
H-E-E-L. Walk alongside.
Oh.
But H-E-A-L.
Heal.
Heal me!
Yeah. That's why some people don't like to play clerics. They don't like to just have to heal everybody all
We
the
were
time.
watching an anime the other day, and somebody healed light wounds or something, and his whole arm grew back. And I was like, "Heal light wounds? What kind of light wound is that?"
What do you call a juice that causes paralysis?
I don't know what.
Ghoul aid.
Oh no. Instead of Kool-Aid, yeah. That's horrible. Banish the jokes.
Okay, last terrible pun here. All right, maybe two. What does a fighter say when he's in a bad mood? Of course, puns are heavily involved here.
Yes. Fighter. What's another name for fighter?
Warrior.
Warrior.
More action related.
I don't know what.
Cleave me alone. Yes, they are. What do you get if you boil a bard? This is a good one, actually. This is a good one to wrap up with.
Boil a bard.
Yes.
I don't know. What do you get?
A scald.
Oh!
That's a good one. That's a good one. Scalded, you know.
Yeah. That's good.
Oh, man.
Because the Icelandic skull.
Yes.
Yes.
K-A-L-D.
Those posts
Yeah,
or whatever.
exactly. I think that's a good one. That's clever.
And we'll leave it at that,
What's
folks.
that?
This is, a dragon walks into a bar, 300 plus one-liners, zingers, and jokes that will slay by Jeff Aldrich and John Taylor. These are we try to have these in every meeting.
Related, or?
Yeah, they're all RPG related. It's an RPG joke book,
Oh, okay.
and we like to have it's part of all of our meetings just for a little fun, and to lighten because we wrote some heavy stuff here. So to
Yeah.
wrap
We
up
should
on
learn some
upbeat.
Elvish again. That'd be nice to bring
Yeah,
that
I
back.
have an idea. I think we should conduct our next meeting entirely in Elvish.
I'm working on Hindi right now. I don't
Oh.
need to try to juggle that. So anyway, I'll try to have this large map dug up. I got to dig up less that's buried back there. Got to dig them all out, get ready for the moot. Have you all RSVP'd yet?
For a Tolkien moot?
Yes.
Yes, but I have not gotten a confirmation email.
Check your
but
spam folder.
I think I have. I don't think
Okay, then it's possible. And then I need to check see if that's broken. But yeah, we need to double check that
so. You want me
so
to
we
email
know.
you, or
I'm a month behind on my email right now because I'm working 100 hours a week for Learning Mate.
100 hours?
Plus
Do you sleep?
100, 120, barely.
He sleeps
That's
in
not
Hindi.
good that's not good for your health.
No, it's not. And I've given him not notice I'm leaving, but notice that needs to change in the next 3 weeks or else. So
Which means the 2 hours that he spent with us really mean a lot. So thank you, Hawk, for making
thank you,
time.
yeah. And thank you so much. It's the middle of the night there. We're so glad to have you here. We always appreciate it very much. Thank you so much.
I might go to church.
Have a good month.
See you guys.
So remember, if you ever want to watch any of the videos in the past, it's youtube.com/Tolkien Scholars. The website is tolkienscholars.org. And you can find links to years and years and years and years and years of conversations. The magazine I mentioned is Other Minds Magazine. It's otherminds.net. It has both Other Hands and Other Minds archives. So you're talking all the way back to 1991 content about Middle-earth And because gaming always pushes the envelope and makes you have to answer these practical questions, there's some really great Tolkien scholarship discussions too.
Like, is there
throughout
soap?
these.
Is there soap in Middle Earth?
All these kind of practical
Soap.
things.
Soap.
Monetary exchange rates, just all kinds of
didn't
stuff.
they use soap when they were at
Oh, in
Bill
Crick Hollow?
no
Or-
Bombadil's house?
Tom Bombadil.
So we'll be
Yes.
back next month on normal schedule, right?
That
There's
we
no
Soap.
schedule change next month.
No.
Third Saturday.
That should work.
Let's verify
Let me double
the
check
date.
here because I have a wedding.
You do indeed. We want to make sure we don't change last
yeah, I
minute
know.
again. So it should be June 18th. Is that the same?
No, I think you mean June 19th.
Or 19th? Is that the
I
same?
thought I
Is
sent you a text message.
that the same weekend?
Oh, let me
Well,
see.
the wedding's on Thursday. I
So
can- I
should
can
we
get away.
do the
COS is
12th or will the 19th work anyway? You saying the wedding's on Thursday?
Yeah.
Oh, you'll be.
Yeah, let's do that. Putting out.
If it was before the wedding, I could see that being a
Is
problem.
that your number?
After, and not even the next day,
Okay.
but
Yes.
2
Well, I
days
sent
after.
you a
Yes.
text
The
message.
So you're
19th
okay.
19th
Okay.
is
Yeah.
So Juneteenth.
It's been a while.
Juneteenth?
With my brother's birthday.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So
I guess
Juneteenth
Did you
is
see-
our next one.
June 19th.
Okay.
Okay.
Any problem with that, dear?
No.
Tolkien
Yeah.
Society?
I'll be gone. I'll be in
If you have
Seattle.
Yeah,
a
you'll be
place you have
Seattle,
in
yeah.
mind, do you wanna-
I
I
would
don't know
like the
yet.
patience
I'm
to
gonna have to
read
think
this.
about it.
Be well, Namarie.
Yeah,
Thank
we'll-
you so
we'll
much.
figure it
Review.
out. Figure it
Okay.
out.
Okay.
Everybody, goodbye,
I will-
everybody.
I will pass it on.
Well, bye.
I mean,
Bye.
I heard
Ciao.
that one, and that's
Ciao.
She's in Italy.
Oh my! Ciao.
Ciao.
She's in tomorrow, actually.
Yes.
Bye.
Yep. Good morning.
Wow.
Yeah. You want my number though?
And it's
No, I
meant,
got
it's
it.
meant for
Which-
kids, is it?